Now on BBC One, grab a cuppa and join Elizabeth Glinka putting your questions to the mayoral candidates. Here's a mayor for the West Midlands.
Good afternoon and welcome to A Mayor for the West Midlands. With me in the studio this afternoon are all the mayoral candidates that you can vote for. So let's start by introducing them. First up, Conservative Andy Street was once the Managing Director of John Lewis before being elected as the region's first Metro Mayor nearly 4 years ago. Also with us is former Cabinet Minister and Labour MP for Birmingham Hodge Hill, Liam Byrne. Jenny Wilkinson is a chartered accountant from Sutton Coldfield who's standing for the Liberal Democrats. Green Party candidate and local councillor from Solihull, Steve Cordwell. And former UKIP candidate in 2017, now standing for Reform UK, Pete Donnell. Welcome to you all and hello to our audience panel who represent a range of experience and opinion from across our region. They're joining us remotely from their homes and workplaces and will be putting their questions to our candidates this afternoon. And for everyone watching at home, please join in the conversation on social media. Now, before we hear our first question, here's a quick reminder of what the Mayor actually does and how the voting works. The West Midlands Mayor is a directly elected politician, making decisions that affect the lives of 3 million people across these 7 metropolitan boroughs. Like the mayors in London and Greater Manchester, the West Midlands Mayor is kind of a figurehead for the region. It's their job to attract investment, both public and private, and promote the area to the rest of the world. They're also responsible for training and apprenticeships, for housing developments. And they have control of the region's transport budget, with final say over bus franchises, roads and trams. Plans to transfer oversight of West Midlands Police to the Mayor are under consideration. This election uses the supplementary voting system, so as well as your first choice, you also get a second preference. These votes come into play if no candidate gets the 50% of votes needed to win outright. So if it's close, the second preferences could decide it. The election takes place on May the 6th. Now, can we please have our first question, which is from Siham Ahmed, who runs a cleaning business. Siham.
Hello, hi everyone. My question is, like many businesses out there, my cleaning company, Clean Zone, has been affected by COVID quite hard. If elected, what is the next step to get businesses like mine back on their feet?
Thanks very much, Siham. Andy Street, let's start with you.
So, Siham, thank you for your question. I know it's a very serious concern and many people are asking exactly the same question as you. And indeed, this whole question about opportunities for our businesses, our citizens, that's what drove me to this 4 years ago, and it drives me even more now, given the gravity of the situation. Now, of course, we've got to get the opening up done as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, getting contracts back there for businesses. But beyond that, we've actually got to think urgently about new jobs. And I've got a clear plan for 100,000 jobs in just 2 years. And we're getting on with it right now. It would easily be the fastest recovery the region has ever seen. It's about making the most of the big investments from the wins that we've achieved recently, like HS2. It's about getting on with the regeneration, whether it be of old industrial places like Longbridge, like Phoenix 10 in Walsall, getting on with our housing and transport investments. That's where jobs come. And of course, regenerating our town and city centres. But above all else, it's about continuing to win the support of government investment. They've got the biggest pockets, and that's what I will do because I'm best positioned to work with government.
Liam Byrne.
Thanks. Well, look, CM, as you know, I mean, our region has been hardest hit. And frankly, it's felt at times like we've been abandoned. So look at what happened in the budget. Despite the fact we were hardest hit, the Towns deal we got, just £2 per person per week. Much worse than the North West, much worse than the West Midlands. We were the only region not to get a free port, and we didn't get the investment we need in the gigafactory for the automotive industry, which is part of our future. Now, I think what's annoyed a lot of people about what they've seen over the last few weeks, frankly, is that you've got Tory ministers more worried about contracts for their mates than contracts for the Midlands. I think that's wrong. I think it's got to change. So, first thing we'll do, emergency budget to keep the public pound local. We spend £20 billion through the public sector in the West Midlands. Why don't we start using those contracts to support businesses like yours, businesses in the region, creating jobs in the region? But second, our Green Manufacturing Commission has charted a way for us to create 200,000 green-collar jobs over the course of the next 7 or 8 years by turning our brownfield sites into green industry zones so that we can become a world capital of green manufacturing, trading our way back to health. So, you know, I know what it's like being a small business person. I've started a small business myself. After May, you'll have a mayor who's finally got the back of people like you.
OK. Before I go to the rest of the panellists, Siham, can you just tell me, have you had any government support, any support from the council for your business during COVID?
Unfortunately, no, due to some restrictions in terms of when the business was registered, when it started, we weren't able to apply for the relief packages that are out there for businesses like mine. So that was a little bit tricky for us. So we've had to just fund it ourselves and do everything by ourselves. But it would be nice to see, the government putting a little bit more into businesses out there. We have seriously been hit hard.
Yeah, thanks, Siham. Pete Donnell, what do you say to Siham? She's had a really, really tough year.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you do about this?
She's one of the 3 million people that's fallen in between all these stools. The short answer, I'd say, Siham, to your question is we need to end this lockdown because, bluntly, the World Health Organization says you only implement lockdowns in very specific circumstance when your health system is about to be overwhelmed and make sure it doesn't. We're not in that circumstance now. This government needs to answer the question why we are still in this lockdown. It's not in the gift of the mayor, obviously, unfortunately, to actually make that happen. He does have a lot of influence and he needs to use, or she needs to use that influence to make sure that the government bluntly realises the damage that this is doing on the ground to businesses of all different kinds. Our hospitality industry is dying on its feet. We've got pubs that still can't open properly. They haven't got outdoor seating, etc. So we need to actually start opening all our hospitality industry up right away, and that will stimulate everything else.
OK, Jenny Wilkinson.
Yes, but what's been happening here really is the government's done some great schemes. The furlough scheme has been great for many businesses, but for businesses like Siham's, small businesses, self-employed, freelancers, I think they've really been let down. And my party and I have been campaigning for more support throughout for those people that are slipping through the cracks, that are missing out on that urgent government support. And I'm going to keep pressing for that support to be delivered to those small businesses that are really the lifeblood of our economy. It's the small businesses across the West Midlands that keep our economy going, providing thousands of jobs across the region. So I really want to carry on calling for support for small businesses like Siham's.
OK, Steve Caldwell, what would the Greens do?
So I think it's worth mentioning at this point that 8 in 10 of the businesses in the West Midlands are SMEs like Siham's. So it's absolutely vital that we prioritise this as it needs to be. I think COVID has really exposed a number of chronic issues that were already in play long before coronavirus came along. So I don't agree with Peter that this is just a question of lifting lockdown. I think it goes deeper than that. I think what we need to be doing is thinking more about what we want our economies to actually deliver. Chasing infinite growth all the time and just relying on money and growth to drive prosperity doesn't work, and we know it doesn't work, and we need to think more carefully about how we recover, how we thrive, how we prosper as a region. So for me, one of the things that I'd really like to do as mayor is create a comprehensive map of supply and demand across the region, and then encourage our anchor institutions, our public sector organisations, our universities, our hospitals, to think much more carefully about how can we source this locally. How do we avoid having to go to the other end of the country or the continent to get those key services and skills and products, when actually we're the city of 1,000 trades, we're the region that the United States used to send an envoy to in the last century to find out how we did things here better than anywhere else. We should be able to become a self-sufficient and really brilliant region again.
Right, let's move on now to our second question, which is from Gary Wills. He was furloughed from his IT recruitment job and lives in Coventry. Gary.
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. What's your question?
I would like to ask the mayoral candidates, what would you do to support all those that face redundancy when the furlough scheme ends? And how will you make sure that the skills that they need to finding work in this rapidly changing job market, how will they get them skills?
Liam Byrne.
So, Gary, there's two things we need to do. So one is on the demand side of the economy. We've spent a lot of the last year talking to about 10,000 residents across the region who said, look, it's time that our region was a leader again. We led the Industrial Revolution. It's now time for us to lead the Green Industrial Revolution. So let's go green, but let's do it in a way that means we're making the things the world needs to go green. Let's turn our brownfield sites into the kind of green industry zones, which you've got quite a few of actually in Coventry, round about LEVC, and indeed, you know, if we can get the gigafactory landed, huge impact on demand. We were the workshop of the world once. We should be the green workshop of the world for this century. But crucially, that's got to come with a plan to provide free retraining for people in the region to get those jobs of the future. Our Green Manufacturing Commission has shown us how we can create 200,000 green manufacturing and trades jobs in the region. But that's no good to us, and it's no good to people coming off furlough if we don't have the free retraining alongside it to match the workers that we've got with the jobs that we're creating.
Gary, can I ask you, what is your fear? What are you worried about happening once the pandemic is over?
There's two things really. I think we've all really struggled on the mental health side during this pandemic. So I would love to see more support provided to improve people's mental well-being through this, because it's been a very lonely period for the job searcher and for people who are facing a time of uncertainty and financial sort of crisis. So I would like to see some support that is focused around the mental health side, but also how can we actually give people that sense of purpose and maybe get them that training that you're talking about, these skills, these jobs that are going to be pretty technical jobs in these gigafactories. You know, how do we get the people that are out of work skilled up for them roles for the future?
Exactly.
Okay.
And at the moment, it's not working.
All right.
So I've got the highest youth unemployment in Britain in Hodge Hill. We're a mile from the Jaguar Land Rover front gate. That tells you everything you need to know about how broken our school system is.
All right, Liam Byrne, we're going to go to Andy Street now. A lot of people nodding their heads there while Gary was talking. What are you going to do?
So we're already on with this. So, as Gary rightly says, about 200,000 people still on furlough. Of course, we want to get as many of them back into the role that they are furloughed from as the economy recovers, as we open up. But there will be some who probably can't go back. So my straight answer to your question, Gary, is we need an absolute revolution in retraining. So let's actually look at what is being done, because there will be new jobs of the future in different sectors. So the digital sector is still growing very fast, has been through the pandemic. So what are we doing? We're leading the country in what the Prime Minister described as pioneering work in our digital boot camps. Nearly everyone who goes through one of those retraining schemes gets a new job. We're with our colleges working on what we call sector-based academies. So whether it be for healthcare, whether it be for the jobs in electrified vehicle maintenance and production, to ask you. So a brilliant example at Wolverhampton College, 700 people going into places there to maintain electric vehicles. And of course, probably the biggest and most important area of all of this retraining is construction. We all know that we've got to build back better, so the construction skills, what we've done around our construction gateway, that too coming on steroids. So we need many thousands of opportunities for retraining for the new jobs of the future.
Steve Caldwell, the Conservative and Labour candidates there stealing your clothes as a Green. They want a green revolution. You know, this is all good stuff, isn't it?
Steve, actually.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is if you want green, you have to vote green on May the 6th. It's as simple as that. Look, Liam talks about a green industrial revolution, but it needs to be a genuinely green industrial revolution that actually focuses on prosperity, and it focuses on thriving, and it focuses on doing that within the confines of the natural world. But to take Gary's point about mental health, I think that's a really, really valid point, because I know for a lot of us, we've had to work from home, sometimes in conditions that aren't really what you need to be able to work from home. You know, it's great to be able to work from home if you've got your own office space. It's not so great if you're stuck on a kitchen worktop table with 4 kids running around your feet, crying for their dinner. And, you know, it's not right to just think that that is the way forward for the future, because honestly, I don't think it is.
So what's the way out?
The question around jobs and skills, the genuinely green industrial revolution that I want to see is making the West Midlands the showpiece, not just of the country, but of the world in terms of responding to the climate emergency. We've just seen a new commitment to reducing our carbon emissions by 78% by 2035. I still don't think that goes far enough. I still think we need to be following the science that the IPCC has put out and aiming for 2030. And if we do that, there's so much opportunity to be taken by this region by committing to that.
So there's a certain amount of agreement there, huge green ambition. Jenny Wilkinson, what about the Lib Dems? Now, I know mental health is something you have actually spoken about quite a lot.
Yes, and I think it's really important. The mental health provision in the West Midlands before the pandemic was poor. Particularly worrying is the instances for young people. And for them, you know, the impact for our young people, the mental health impact for them of being in lockdown, for missing out on their education, for trying to start out on their careers, it's really terrible. And we've long been really behind in actually providing adequate support. The waiting lists to get support for young people with mental health issues are really shocking. You have to be, you know, thinking about suicide before you actually get seen. The treatment is just not good enough. We have to address that. And we also need to just think a bit about our lifestyles. Actually, you know, what people have found is connecting with nature, getting out in the environment, all these things really help. We need to just think about how we're living and how we're connecting with our world. Let's slow down things a bit. Let's make things more local. Let's engage in our communities and get out in nature, and that can actually all help us.
Okay, Pete Donnell.
Good points.
We've had a year-long campaign of fear. The idea being that it makes you comply with the rules. If you make people scared enough, then they will basically abide by all the rules. I'm saying the time for that is ended. I'm not sure it ever was the time for it, but essentially it's been...
There was never a time that we...
There was never a time to drive fear into people constantly in order to make them obey rules. I'm not saying you should ignore the rules. I'm just saying the mental health issues that has caused is terrible. We've all talking about we don't have enough mental health provision. It all costs a lot of money. Absolutely, we're lagging behind in that respect. I'm saying that we can argue the toss as to whether it should ever have happened. It has happened. It's gone on for a year. It's caused a lot of mental health issues, and we need to stop that. We're still seeing adverts on the TV now where thank you for swerving away from somebody on a path in an open field or something. That's not where we need to be. We need to replace that with hope and positivity. All the great things that people, I'm not going to repeat all the things that people have suggested, massive investment in training. I'm a huge fan of apprenticeships. We need to make sure that those are real, good, valid things that lead on to jobs.
Okay, Gary, what do you make of that? What do you make of what people have had to say?
I think I agree on the retraining. It's going to give people that sense of purpose, so they've got something. But I don't think we really tackled the biggest problem on the mental health. I don't think anyone's really given a clear answer, you know, as to what they're going to do. Because let's say we go into lockdown 3 or 4, whatever it is again, you know, there's going to be no one fit to work. You know, the phone lines are just, you know, you can't get through to somebody to give you that support. The money is not being invested into the support charities and non-for-profits. So we've got a pandemic on our hands, you know, in the future if we're not careful on just mental health by itself. So I'm really sort of questioning what we've actually put in our provisions for, you know, support for people going through tough times at the minute.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave that one there, otherwise we're going to run out of time to talk about all the other important things we have to talk about. So we will move on now, and our next question is from Adam Bars, who's studying economics at the University of Wolverhampton. Adam.
Hello, everyone. So, what I wanted to put to the candidates is that me and my partner are looking to buy a house, but we're struggling to find something that we're able to afford. So if you were to be elected, what would you do to make the dream of home ownership a reality for people like me?
Okay, thanks very much, Adam. This is a really important one for a lot of people, isn't it? Affordable housing. Jenny Wilkinson.
Yes, it absolutely is. And what the problem is that over years and years and years, we've just not had enough housing built across the whole country, including in the West Midlands. So it has to be an absolute priority to get that housing in place and to make sure it is genuinely affordable. And as well as affordable housing to buy, we're also desperately short of housing for rent, for social rent in particular. There's lots of people homeless and the hidden homeless. People tend to think about rough sleepers on the streets, but there's so many families across the West Midlands who are being moved from one temporary accommodation to another, often, not near their children's schools. It's a real problem, and we have to really get on and get these houses built across our region. So for whoever is mayor, that has to be a clear priority to build houses. We're desperately short of it, and they have to be affordable. All too often, the affordability targets that are set are never properly met. They end up being a tiny proportion of the overall developments because it's better for developers to have, big, expensive houses. That's what they want. So we actually need more intervention to get proper, affordable housing.
OK, Liam Byrne.
Yeah, so if there's one reason I'm standing for mayor, it's to try and make homelessness history. I've been working with the homeless community in Birmingham since I lost my dad to what was a lifelong struggle with alcohol about 5 years ago. And what you see doing that is that it's fine to have cranes in the sky, but it's not acceptable for us to have homeless in the doorways, or families living in hostels, or young families trying to get their first foot on the housing ladder. Now, Andy will take refuge in housing numbers, which are for the whole West Midlands, down to the Welsh borders. But actually building homes near Wales doesn't help you if you're trying to get a home in Wolverhampton. So look, 85% of the homes that we built in the region last year were not affordable. 97% were not homes for social rent. So it's no wonder we've got a housing crisis. So look, we have got to double the number of homes that we're building for social rent. We have got to build on brownfield first, that's right. And schemes like the scheme launched by Wolverhampton Labour Council, actually, for the £1 home, you basically pay the rent and it goes towards a mortgage, are exactly the kind of thing that we should be expanding. We can do this if we put our mind to it, but building homes and building communities is where we need to focus, because I happen to believe that everyone deserves a place to call their own.
Andy Street, you're not building enough affordable homes.
So let's just have a look at exactly what's going on here. So it's an incredibly important question, fully accept. Everyone has that dream of a home of their own. And the total fact is, we've doubled the number of homes being built across the West Midlands over the last 5 years. Doubled.
Is that a region conurbation, Andy?
It is the total of the 3 housing market areas. But we've doubled also the number of affordable homes. And let's just give the numbers there. 2,500 the year before I was elected mayor, 5,000 last year. And we're doing the huge majority of them on brownfield land. And in this sense, your city is leading the way with the Brownfield Institute in Wolverhampton. And what we've also done in Wolverhampton, and Liam kindly called it out for me, is we've got this incredibly innovative scheme that we call Help to Own. It's at the Marches in Wolverhampton, a trial working with the City Council. Yes, and that's good to work cross-party in a non-partisan way to bring something within the reach of everybody. And last thing, we've also changed the definition of affordable housing uniquely in the West Midlands to make it related to people's income, not property prices. So we have actually made huge progress, and in my plans we are utterly committed to keep going on all of those targets.
I mean, I'm just going to ask Adam now, how out of reach is buying a property for you, Adam? How difficult is it for you to do that?
I think it's exceptionally difficult. I mean, even if you look at, it was only yesterday, I think, that there was a report issued by the BBC saying that house prices are now at an all-time high, average house prices. So, looking sort of towards average wage for Wolverhampton, I believe that's in around 18 to 20,000. I'm sure somebody will correct me. But I'd say even the 5% deposit mortgages that are being offered, a lot of the banks are saying that it's 4 times your income. So, just doing the maths off the top of your head, you're only going to be able to afford a house that's worth 160,000. And this is in a country where average house prices are considerably over that. Mm-hmm. So it makes it very, very difficult for especially people like myself, who's 26 now, looking to buy my first home. It's going to be probably 30s before I'm able to do that. When you look at what your parents and grandparents were able to do, it's...
Yeah, exactly. No, I can see exactly this situation. Pete Donnell.
I'm not going to repeat many of the good points that have already been made. What I'd like to add is I think there's an opportunity because prior to COVID, we had a lot of shops already, unfortunately, where I live, boarded up in town centres and city centres even sometimes. We've got a lot more of them now because people have switched their buying habits. I was talking to somebody the other day. I used to buy my oil, he's really into bikes and the stuff, from a specialist motorbike shop. That's closed down. He now buys it from Amazon from half the price. So what I'm saying essentially is, rather than always be looking at building new ones, let's look at change of use. There's going to be a lot of shops inside town centres, never going to come back, unfortunately. People are not going to switch their buying habits, so let's look at changing them, a change of use, and actually utilise that, turning it into affordable housing.
Steve Caldwell.
So I could talk about this for hours, but what I want to say
Don't,
first,
we haven't got that.
No, I know we don't. First of all, I just want to say sorry to Adam, because housing's a human right, and this is a problem that's been around for a really long time, and it isn't going to get solved overnight, much as I wish it would be. There's a few points that I just wanted to pick up, actually. So Andy's right that he's changed the definition of what affordable means. So I think it's 35% of your income. Right. What he hasn't done is change the floor for the number of affordable properties that actually get built in any development. That's still only at 20%. So if only 20% of any development is affordable, the supply just isn't there. It's just not going to happen.
And it's a floor we're not achieving.
Exactly that, yeah, exactly that.
That isn't true.
So
It's 14%, Andy.
No.
In the West Midlands Combined Authority, it's 14%, it's 3% affordable, it's 3% for social rent. The homes that are going up are being bought off-plan by investors in Dubai and Hong Kong. They are absent buy-to-let landlords, when what Adam needs is a home in a community to call his own.
And that is what is being produced. Any development the Combined Authority...
Why is Adam in the pickle he's in now?
Any development the Combined Authority contributes to has a minimum of 20%. As is revealed by Steve's comment, that is higher than most authorities achieve.
But it's not enough.
That's what we're driving.
It's not enough.
But it is if at the same time we're increasing the total number, because that means many more come up. And as a consequence, in Wolverhampton, new brownfield developments are offering family homes within reach of people's real living wage.
OK, I'm afraid we have to carry on now. Our next question is from Sheila Cooper, who lives in Berkswell on the route of the high-speed rail link, and her question very much relates to that. Sheila.
Yes, good afternoon, candidates. HS2 is threatening to turn my life and the lives of many like me into a nightmare. What commitment will you give to ensure the people building HS2 respect the daily lives, safety and well-being of those living alongside the line during construction?
And just to clarify this is a reference to HS2's proposals to use public roads around Walsall Common for their construction traffic. Steve, to come back to you, this is your area, isn't it?
This is my area, and I need to be very careful here because there is a live planning application actually in with Solihull Council at the moment, so I can't actually say anything to prejudice that. I'm very confident that the planning committee in Solihull will reach the right decision, though. I have no doubts there. I think more widely, when we look at HS2, and I think I should put on record now, the Green Party opposes HS2. However, it's very clearly coming, whether we like it or not. So for me, if we're going to have it, if we're going to spend £106 billion or whatever the budget is on this giant railway, it has to deliver. It has to deliver. And for me, a transport system that we can actually use in the West Midlands could be built off of the back of HS2. If the policy commitments are there from local, from regional and from national government. And for me, that means using the capacity that apparently is going to be released at Birmingham New Street to really drive the number of trains you can get locally and regionally into the centre of Birmingham and out to the other towns and cities in the West Midlands. But it also means prioritising buses, getting the tram network extended throughout the region, and being brave and recognising that there are just too many cars on our roads at the moment. We've got to do something about that.
OK, Andy Street, you are a self-confessed champion of HS2. What do you say to someone like Sheila, whose life is potentially going to be blighted by its construction?
So I would say that I'd stand, she's right, Sheila's right, and I'd stand absolutely with her in fighting them over this. And actually Sheila knows that's true, because only 2 weeks ago it was me who was taking the case for Walsall Common residents directly to the chair of HS2, and we've had a couple of interactions with them since I wrote that letter. So
Can you really be trusted on this? I mean, by some accounts, if you don't win this election, you're already being teed up by the government to take over the running of HS2.
By some accounts, Westminster Scribblers, as I said when that first came up, no one had discussed it with me. So
you haven't been offered the job yet?
I have not been offered any job, no. It's a wonderful, wonderful Westminster bubble story. My only interest in this is supporting residents like Sheila where there is genuine concern about how they're going about it, and I've called them out on it. But at the same time, making sure that the West Midlands gets the benefits of HS2. So that's jobs in the construction, jobs from the investment that will come on the back of it. And of course, if we come back to the community most affected in Solihull, the really exciting news that in the area around Arden Cross, the interchange station, that we're now bidding to government to be the site of the new general full-service hospital for Solihull and the region. So that's the type of benefit that's got to come, but we also call them out where they've got it wrong.
Liam Byrne.
Sheila, my message is fight on, and this is winnable. I've had a similar kind of fight in my own constituency in Hodge Hill, where High Speed 2 wanted to build a network marshalling yard. They also wanted to put 200 trucks a day through my constituency. We fought that case and we won. Now, Steve is right to say the way to get the benefits from High Speed 2 is to build the transport system we need around it. We could actually, if we did that, we could take 1 million trucks off the road each year. That would transform how easy it was to get around on the M6 or the M5 or the M42. But just like High Speed 2, you know, we also need a high-speed plan for a mass transit system. This is Andy's annual report from last year. The signature transport achievement is 1.25 miles of tram track in a year. There are snails that go 5 times further than that in a year. So look, we need to deploy very light rail because it's 20% cheaper than trams. We need an all-electric bus route. We need to double the number of journeys taken by cycling. And crucially, we need to be making the public transport that we need here in the West Midlands. If we ride it here, we should make it here. That's the way we bring back industry.
I'm going to bring in Andy Street here. You've been moving at the pace of a snail.
So thank you, Elizabeth, for letting me respond to that, because I think I should. It's a lovely line.
No, snails go faster
Liam
than 1.5 miles.
Thank you for the clarification.
Liam says he teases me about it, and it is a tease, but it's also not true. Let's look at what's actually happened here. When I became mayor, the annual investment in transport was £38 million a year. We're now investing 7 times that. So we are expanding the metro in Wolverhampton, in Birmingham, in Dudley. We're reopening closed railway lines closed by Lord Beeching. And of course, we are investing in a complete electric city for buses in Coventry and rapid bus routes through Birmingham. So Liam knows that those numbers are because of what was on the stocks when I became mayor, and I have transformed the amount of cash going into public transport, as well as, by the way, getting bus fares frozen for 4 years. So it's a typical politician's remark. It doesn't bear examination.
OK, that's the rebuttal.
If you want to read
Let's
the report,
hear from
Sheila,
Pete Donnell
it's on
now.
the WMCA website.
Reform UK.
I think I've been a long-term opponent of HS2. Well, I know I have. I'm saying I have. Essentially, what I'm saying is I don't think it was ever properly cost-benefit analysed to start with. When it was 33 billion, I think, originally. It's now well over 100. People will argue, oh, it's not. It probably is. Every chance it could double to 200 billion. If you go to someone and say, I've got 100 billion to spend, how should we spend it? Oh, let's build one high-speed line. OK, it goes off on a Y to Leeds and Manchester. That's not the way. It should have been spent improving the entire network. I slightly disagree with Steve, because I personally would still end it. I think just because we've already wasted £9 billion on it, in my opinion, that's not an excuse to go and spend another 90 billion.
You just down tools now. You just
obviously, it would have to be managed. It would have to be managed because it's gone a long way. But the truth of the matter is, if I could just finally say, HS2 is acting like a bully. It's not paying the proper price for people's properties when they're being taken over, and it's not acting properly. It's disregarding the wishes of residents, which it said it would be sensitive to. It's not acting in a proper way. It's acting like a big bully.
I agree. There's issues with HS2 and how it's been implemented, but it's still the right thing to do. We need proper infrastructure. If we're going to move towards beating the climate emergency, we've got to get cars off the road. We've got to get... It's not about a fast journey to London, which most people think it is. It's about freeing up capacity on the rail network, which is struggling. So by building HS2, we're freeing up capacity for commuter lines, for freight to go onto the rails and get off our roads. So I think it's a good project. but it has been very badly implemented. We do need to really scrutinise the costs. We need to scrutinise how people like Sheila are being treated and local residents, and how the processes have been done. I think the management of it has been poor, and we need to look into that and challenge that. But the project in itself is the right thing to be doing.
Thank you very much for that. Of course, HS2 not here to defend themselves. I'm sure they may dispute some of that, but I do understand how you and your neighbours are feeling in Berkswell. Right, we must move on now, and we're going to talk a little bit about culture. Our question is from Fabio Thomas, who lives and works in Birmingham. Fabio.
Hi folks, so we've spoken a little bit about sort of positivity and mental health post-COVID, and one of the biggest ways to combat this is sort of engagement and inclusion in arts and culture and entertainment. I don't think that the arts and culture offer in the West Midlands actively sort of reflects what people actually like to take part in and enjoy, and I'd like to know what the new mayor would do to make the sector better reflect people's actual needs.
OK, so I think what Fabio is trying to get at here is that what we have at the moment maybe isn't broad-based enough. It isn't relatable for a lot of people. So Jenny Wilkinson.
For me, I think the key thing about arts and culture is to bring it into people's communities. So what I'm really passionate about is seeing lots of small projects around the region in local communities. I'm a trustee of a charity that runs events connected with our local library, which includes sort of arts and culture elements. Things like we did a children's opera, for example, for which, opera, it's seen as a bit of a highbrow thing, but this certainly wasn't. It's bringing it into schools for young children to get involved in it and appreciate the arts and music. So for me, I really am passionate about supporting those local community groups and local community projects. There is so much going on and so much potential around the West Midlands, but the challenge is getting funding. It's quite hard to get funding for arts projects. It's quite difficult to find where to get it. It's quite difficult to actually complete the complicated application forms and things. So we really need to look at smoothing up that process and getting art and culture embedded in our communities.
Liam Byrne.
Well, the first thing we've got to do is have a mayor who will fight to get our share. The fact that we've had to come here to Salford to record this tells you everything you need to know about the lack of BBC investment in our own region. Second, we need to use the Commonwealth Games and the City of Culture to tell our story to the world. One of the reasons I want to be the first city region to go green is because I want the world to know, the 1.5 billion people watching the Commonwealth Games and the City of Culture, that we're back as the green workshop of the world. That's good for inward investment. But the key thing is we need a decade of togetherness using culture and grassroots sport to bring people together from the City of Culture and Commonwealth Games through to the 2030 World Cup, which, by the way, we should be hosting in the West Midlands. It's been community spirit that has got us through this last year. We're a really diverse region, but culture is what can bring us together. And when we come together as a region, there's nothing we can't do.
Andy Street.
Yes, thank you very much, Fabio. Dare I say it, it's not just about Birmingham, this question, it's a question for the whole region. So let's start in Coventry, actually, because one of the most important things that's happened in the last few years is we won the right to host City of Culture, and that will be an incredible dynamo for grassroots culture across that city. And I'm so pleased that the Combined Authority is actually the biggest single investor in City of Culture. Going forward, the answer has to be about supporting grassroots organisations and voluntary organisations everywhere. So look at the Lighthouse in Wolverhampton, for example, what's going on at Sutton Town Hall. Let's look at the training and development we put in, for example, to the Brierley Hill Resonance Music Institute there. Brilliant new facility there in the heart of the Black Country. And of course, we've also got to think about the culture that comes from our faiths. So one of the things I'm proudest of is the work we've done with the Hindu community, for example, to bring their culture out for events like Diwali in the square. So a whole host of support at that grassroots level to complement what's already world-class institutions, as you say, in the centre of Birmingham.
OK, Pete Donnell, what do you say to Fabio?
What I'd like to add to this is take it slightly different direction. Excuse me. We are a very diverse lots of very diverse communities. They are unfortunately quite segregated still. I would like to see the Combined Authority getting involved in integrating communities, bringing them together, all sorts of different schemes. Sports and arts and culture are the best, in my opinion, ways of doing that. If they bring people together, a common aim to win the football match or whatever it happens to be. So I'd like to see the Combined Authority really get down to grassroots level and actually bring all these communities together and make them better integrated.
Steve Caldwell.
So we had a great debate on this earlier in the campaign, actually, that was hosted by the Royal
Great
Shakespeare
debate
Company.
now, come
We're
on.
having a great debate now as well, absolutely. I'm just saying this is something that's already come up. I've been a working musician myself over the course of maybe 2 decades, and just to go back to Cian's point earlier, had I been in that situation last year, I would have been in exactly the same situation as Cian, because I wouldn't have had any support either. I feel like we don't actually value art and culture enough in this country, and I say that because I'm seeing lots of small venues being shut down or being turned over for development purposes, and it feels like the value is just not being placed on that. And for me, this is actually a great way to encourage community cohesion and to help communities come together, whether it's as a result of Brexit or, as we were speaking about earlier, what Gary said around the mental health impacts of lockdown. There's something about being sat in that village hall next to your neighbours who you may not agree with on everything, but if you can laugh at the same show or be moved by the same piece of poetry, that can make a real difference to how our communities recover from COVID.
Fabio, what do you think the solution is?
I think it's about sort of bringing a broad range of people into the table. We did a piece of research recently which found that 9 in 10 young people in the UK would now class themselves as creative. Yeah. If that's the case, then why aren't all those young people attending our arts and cultural institutions and our grassroots things that happen right across the region? The definition of arts and culture doesn't match up with what people want to enjoy, and that's something I think we really need to take a long, hard look at ourselves and tackle. It's something that I think the Mayor could really champion, but I think still in people's answers, I'm not really hearing how they go about doing that.
OK, all right, we must move on now. Let's hear our final question. It's from Ezekiel King, who's a former gang member and actually served time in prison, but now mentors young people to help them keep out of trouble. Ezekiel.
Hi, guys. So I represent marginalised and deprived communities in the West Midlands, like the Lasals, Handsworth, Hillfields area of Coventry and Wood End area of Coventry. My roots come from crime. As a young person, I got involved in crime and gangs and that sort of stuff. And I've never voted, and most of my community and people that I know from my previous life have never voted. We see politics as not tangible. There's something we're not involved in. They don't directly affect our lives. If elected, will you guys make politics more tangible to tackle some of the real issues that these communities face, like gang violence, inequalities and social exclusion?
Pete Donnell.
Great question, Ezekiel. I think the Mayor is a figurehead for the West Midlands. It's absolutely essential that they are approachable, that they get involved in the kind of ways that you've been talking about. I'm not an ex-former chief executive or a long-term career politician. I'm just somebody who lives in the West Midlands, got some good analyst skills and problem-solving skills, and I wanted to apply those into a different area. So I would want to get out there, talk to people like yourself, find out what the real on-the-ground problems are, and lend whatever I can to helping with those problems.
OK, Jenny Wilkinson.
It's a really great question, Ezekiel, and thank you for asking. For me, this is what being the Mayor is all about. It's getting out into our communities, building those relationships and working with people on the ground. I don't know what people's lived experiences are. I've lived my life. The only way I can understand people's own experiences is to listen to them, to listen to their concerns. People are a bit tired of politicians coming in and telling them what the solutions are. Actually, it's by working together that we can build a stronger community for the West Midlands. So it's great to work with groups like Ezekiel's business and individuals and residents. Let's bring people together, and together we can solve the problems. It's not by me coming in and telling you what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is. I want to listen to you.
Andy Street, are you guilty over the last 4 years as Mayor of kind of being focused on the big projects like HS2 and forgetting to reach out to people like Ezekiel and the people he works with?
No, I don't think so, no. But let me say, I do think Ezekiel's question is spot on. I suspect that Ezekiel and his friends are not interested in politics, politicians, elections, and you know what? In a sense, I don't blame you. But I suspect you are interested in the subjects that are at stake here. Where you're going to work, where you're going to live, how you're going to travel around, how we're going to do our bit to change the environment for the better. So the subjects are things we can all be passionate about, even if the political process isn't. And you know what? We've also called out some of the toughest stuff in my time as mayor. Who was it who, faced with the horrible inequalities that the pandemic brought about, who was it who called that out honestly in our Health of the Region report? It was me and the combined authority. And we've now got to act on those inequalities. And that's exactly why I'm here too, Ezekiel, to do something about these issues, to deliver. And I would commit again to doing it in a collaborative way, non-partisan way, and to use all my business experience to win the investment that can genuinely change this.
Liam Byrne.
Ezekiel, good for you on turning things around and helping turn things around for others. So look, we spent the last year talking to over 10,000 people about our manifesto. We wanted to write it from the ground up. The issue you flag was one of the most important issues that people of the West Midlands raised. And look at what's happened, how the rug has been pulled out from under our young people. We're the youngest region in Europe. We've had 80% cuts to our youth services. We've got knife crime up by over a third. The apprenticeship system's collapsed by 40%, and we've got youth unemployment of over 20%. So my emergency budget will have the first big pledge that we made on this campaign. We're going to put youth workers back in every neighbourhood. We're going to back them with investment to open spaces for young people. We're going to ask employers to open jobs to young people. We're going to double apprenticeship numbers and bring schools, colleges and universities together to create a programme for tomorrow's engineers and creatives.
Okay.
We've got amazing young
I'm
people.
going to have to move on. We're running out of time. Okay, Steve Caldwell.
So, very briefly, I believe that the problem with political disengagement is because too much of politics is done to people and not with them. And that's the reason why I joined the Green Party when I did, was because one of the things that we believe in really strongly is actually devolving power to the lowest practicable level. So in real terms as a mayor, what that means is I want organisations like Ezekiel's not just to be on the outside shouting in and trying to get their voices heard. I want them in the room talking to us, advising people like me who I don't have that lived experience of that environment, so I don't know what the answer is, as Jenny says. But we have to have genuine collaboration and not just, consultation by the numbers, which is, it's so easy to fall into that. And I think if people saw that they had a role to play in the political process, we might be more interested in voting. We had, 26% turnout back in 2017, and we were happy with that. It's not good enough, and it needs to get better.
Okay, well, with that in mind, Ezekiel, could you just tell us, I mean, what would make you vote? What would engage you?
So first of all, thank you guys. Whoever is elected, I do hope to hear from your office, or when I do try and engage with your office, I hope that's successful. That being said, one small thing that could have a major effect in tackling this issue is making high-level information more widely spread. So all of you guys will have heard of books like Think Big and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon. I had to find this literature myself independently at 26, 27 years old. It's unacceptable. Totally this information, high-level information, needs to be more widespread in marginalised communities so that we all can grow at an equal rate. And things like this is going to start to reduce social exclusion and start to change some of the mindsets of the young people who are taking each other's lives. And this is happening today in our cities.
Ezekiel, thank you so much.
Lastly, guys, everything that you guys have said sounds really good. I just hope that it's acted on. So thank you, guys.
Okay, that's probably a good place to leave it. Lots of people on the screens nodding. Sadly, our time is up. That's all we've got time for. Thank you very much to all of our mayoral candidates and to our audience panel for their questions, and of course to you at home for watching. Goodbye for now.